So most people know a certain individual called David Goggins, and a certain quote he said, which is "stay hard," in his US accent, like "stay hard, stay hard." That was awful. And look, there's value in pushing yourself to an uncomfortable level, but when we start to take it to the extremes, we don't eat for a certain 24-hour period and call it health and call it a detox. And look, there's definitely value in pushing yourself and making yourself a bit uncomfortable, because that's how we grow at the end of the day. But when we start to go on 24-hour fasts and call it a detox, or restrict our calories to 1200 during the week only to then binge and pig out on the weekend, that is not sensible, and that is extremism, and that is actually self-sabotage just disguised as motivation. So if you clicked on this video, you're probably interested in finding out why that extremist mindset isn't supporting you right now and why it won't in the future. And so in this video, we're gonna break that down. How you can stop going from 0 to 100 to 100 to 0 and just cruise at 70 consistently. So the fitness industry loves extremes. They love it. 75 hard, 1,000-calorie diet, wake up at 4 a.m, the juice cleanse, only eat carbs, only eat proteins. And as you can kind of sense, it's very all or nothing. Only do this, not let's have a balance between this and this. And I used to live like that a lot. Like I was the worst when it came to extremes. If you could plot on a scale of 0 to 100 where I was at one time, it was either one end of the scale. It was never in between. And even right now, after working on this for like 10 years, I still would class myself as a pretty all or nothing person, but I've definitely improved, and I'm probably closer to that 50-50 now instead of that 100 or 0. But it took a while, and it's taking a lot of time in business and my personal life now, not just from a food context and an exercise context, because that's where it was before. But now as I get older and I started to run this coaching business, I've even started seeing it show up in here, whereby like there's days where I would want to work past 1, 2 in the morning to get a project done, to then only feel the downside of that the next day, where I would be so tired I wouldn't be productive at all. And it was just completely counterintuitive to stay up that late the night before anyway. And for someone like yourself, like I mentioned at the start of the video, you may be saving all your calories for the weekend only to then feel extreme hunger as soon as it comes, binge all of these calories back, and then put on all the weight you've just lost over the Monday through to the Friday. And all of this talks, and the key word here is sustainability. Sustainability. I love this story, and I don't know if it's an Australian thing, it was definitely a thing in the UK, which is the story of the tortoise and the hare. And I don't know if you guys know it, but tortoise is moving at 10 miles an hour, and the hare can go up to 100. And they're both trying to reach this end goal, this flag, a mile away, let's say. Hare speeds off when he gets tired, and he can rest, he can chill out. And all this time, the tortoise is slowly creeping on. He's slowly coming over. And what happens is the hare, for whatever reason, he goes to sleep, or he burns out, or he's exhausted because he just sprinted the entire time. He loses the race, and the tortoise wins. And I see this so much in myself, in my personal life, in my working life, in the foods that I used to eat as well. And you're probably on the other side of this screen experiencing that right now, whether that's in business, work, personal life, but probably and specifically when it comes to your health and fitness. You're doing challenge after challenge, 6-week shred, 8-week shred. You're tracking your calories extensively and then letting loose on the weekend. You're cutting out carbs to then only binge on them on the weekends. And I say all this with a bit of a giggle because that used to be me. I did that for 10 years straight. But here's the thing, is that person always burns out. That hare who runs the fastest at the start, does the most miles at the start, who loses the weight the quickest, is always the one that puts it back on. Is always the one that burns out and goes through this endless cycle. And then again, that was a cycle that I went through for 10 years before I started to realize that, hey, why don't I just slow down the pace at the start? Why don't I just try to make this a bit more enjoyable? And as a result, maybe my progress wasn't as linear and quick, and maybe it was a bit slower and it kind of moved like that, like a bit of a wave, but over time it went up. Instead of looking like some kind of cryptocurrency graph, it looked like a diversified fund. So if you want some actionable advice into how you can actually stop being this person that goes from 0 to 100 to 0 all over again and starts to be this person that just has that balance and, you know, slowly goes like this, what I want you to focus on is that process. Is reverse engineering this to the point where you can ask yourself the question, hey, can I sustain this habit for 6, 12 months down the line? Because if the answer is no to that, then don't do it. If the answer is yes, you can sustain a daily walk or a gym session 3 times a week or getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep, then continue to do these things. But if the answer is no, I can't sustain 4 hours of sleep a night, or no, I can't sustain eating 1,000 calories worth of chicken and rice every single day, then there's a fundamental issue there. And that's what you need to improve. And that's what you need to fix. So if you feel like that's all too much, however, for yourself to process, and maybe you even know this, right, already, but you're still struggling. Maybe it's accountability you need. Maybe you need a bit of a guide, a voice, someone in your corner. And yeah, like I said, I run a coaching business. We help men essentially lose weight without calorie counting, seeing food as fuel, focusing on the sustainability around health transformation. And if that's something you're interested in, you can find out a bit more. We can have a conversation, you know, leave a credit card at home. Don't worry, it's no sales call, but you can find out a bit more about how we could potentially help you bridge that gap by clicking the link in the bio. See you soon.